the Baptist, or Yochanan the Immerser, how he came in the spirit and power of Elijah, and how the things that were associated with his ministry thematically fit with the Elijah message or the Elijah ministry. Zacharias, the father of John the Baptist, was a priest of the course of Abijah. Luke chapter 1, verse 5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abijah. And his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. With this piece of information that he was of the course of Abijah, we know what time of the year that he was serving in the temple. The Abijah course was the 8th course of priests, as we can understand going back to 1 Chronicles chapter 24. Verse 1, verse 5, and verse 10, it is written, Now these are the divisions of the sons of Aaron. Thus were they divided by lot. The 8th lot, or the 8th course, was Abijah. In the first century, at the time of Jesus, Israel was divided into 24 districts. From the Talmud, Ta'anit 26a, we are told the following information. This is the details concerning the Ma'amadot. The earlier prophets instituted 24 mishmarot, or districts, and each mishmar, or district, was represented at the temple in Jerusalem by its own ma'amad, or individual priests, Levites, and Israelites. The priests from each of the 24 districts served 1 week in the temple twice a year. The priests were divided into 24 divisions, with each division serving in the temple for 1 full week every half year. The division was subdivided into 6 families or groups, and each group was in service on 1 day of the week. Priests from each of the 24 districts of Israel served during the biblical feasts. Therefore, because we have 2 biblical feasts by the time we get to the 8th course, the course of Abijah served in the 10th week of the year. At the temple, Zacharias was burning incense at the altar of the temple. Luke chapter 1, verse 9 and verse 11. According to the custom of the priest's office, his lot was to burn incense, which means prayers, when he went into the temple of the Lord. And there appeared unto him an angel of the Lord standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And what is being prayed at the altar? There is a set prayers known as the Amidah, or the standing prayers, or the 18 benedictions. The Amidah are 18 benedictions which are prayed 3 times a day by traditional Jews. 2 of these 18 prayers are for the end of the exile of the house of Jacob and the coming of King Messiah. The coming of King Messiah is associated with the coming of Elijah, who precedes King Messiah. From the Messiah text by Raphael Patai, on page 181, he explains that Orthodox Jews pray 3 times a day for the end of the exile of the house of Jacob and the coming of King Messiah. One of the great themes of the Messianic cycle is one that since the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by the Romans in the year 70, Jews have prayed 3 times a day for the ingathering of the exiles, which for them is synonymous with redemption, or the end of the exile. Associated with this is the 10 lost tribes, who will be ingathered by the Messiah in the end of days. Continuing on page 321 of the Messiah text, the requests for redemption, the coming of Messiah addressed to God, are part of the Amidah prayer, popularly known as the 18 benedictions, which is the most important Jewish prayer recited 3 times a day. We are now going to look at the 10th prayer, which is a prayer for the ingathering of the exiles. It goes like this: blow the great shofar for our freedom, and lift up a banner to gather our exiles, and gather us from the four corners of the earth. Blessed are you, Lord, who gathers the banished of your people Israel. In the book From Exile to Redemption, Volume 1, on page 156, by Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, he explains that it's Jewish understanding that Elijah will precede the coming of the Messiah. That is why in Matthew chapter 17 and verse 10, the disciples asked Jesus, why do the scribes or the rabbis teach that Elijah must first come or precede the coming of King Messiah? Matthew chapter 17, verses 11 through 13, Jesus answered and said, Elijah truly shall, that is future, he will come and do what? Restore all things. What is he restoring? Faith in the God of Israel, or Yeshua the Messiah, by following Torah and keeping his commandments. But since we had a first coming of the Messiah, he explains, Elijah is come already, or the spirit of Elijah, but they knew him not. You see, likewise in the end of days, the majority of the body of Messiah will not know that Elijah is in their midst. But they've done unto him whatsoever they listed. They didn't want to hear his message. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood that he spoke of them of John the Baptist. In Luke chapter 1, verse 13 and verse 17, it explains to us that John came in the spirit and the power of Elijah. He wasn't Elijah reincarnated. He came in this spirit and in his power and in his authority. Luke chapter 1, verse 13, but the angel said unto him, fear not, Zacharias, for your prayer is heard, and your wife shall bear you a son, and shall call his name John. He will go before him in the spirit and the power of Elijah. In Malachi chapter 4, verses 4 and 5, we're told what the message is of Elijah, and it is, in verse 4, remember the Torah of Moses. Verse 5 of Malachi 4, behold, I send you Elijah the prophet before the coming and great and dreadful day of the Lord. In keeping a traditional Passover celebration, there are 4 cups for a Passover celebration. Spiritually, the 4 cups of Passover teach us about our personal salvation in Messiah. The 4 cups represent the following: the cup of sanctification, the cup of affliction and deliverance, the cup of redemption, and the cup of his coming kingdom. In the book From Exile to Redemption, Volume 1, on page 99, by Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, he explains that it is a custom that at Passover that there is a cup that is set aside for Elijah. And the purpose of this cup is the Jewish people's belief that Elijah will precede the coming of the Messiah. This cup, known as the cup of Elijah, is not drunk like the 4 cups that are associated with Passover, but the cup of Elijah is poured out. The cup of Elijah reminds us that before Messiah will return, that Elijah will precede his coming. In step 14 of a traditional Passover Seder known as Hallel, where you drink the 4th cup, that is when a cup is poured for Elijah. Traditionally at this time, the children go to the door to look for the coming of Elijah. Psalm 115 to 118 are recited. Then the great Hallel, or Psalm 136, is recited. Then you drink the 4th of the 4 cups of Passover. The 4th cup is known as the cup of his kingdom, or the cup of his coming. And there is a song that is sung traditionally known as